It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 222, entitled The Busiest Woman in WordPress. This episode was recorded on Monday, the 19th of September, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley. I will be joined by three fabulous guests. We have Michelle Frechette, we also have Amber Hines, and we have Marcus Burnett as well. We're here, as always, to talk about the WordPress news. And what are we talking about this week? Well, first of all, we talk about a video which Justin Tadlock made, all about what's coming in WordPress 6.1, which is now just around the corner. We also get into whether or not WebP should be part of WordPress core, or whether it should be something called a Canonical plugin. What even is that? We then get into a long discussion about Michelle's experience at WordCamp US over the last week or so, and how there were some problems for her from an accessibility point of view. GoDaddy have also launched in beta their new managed WordPress stores. We talk extensively about what's in it and what you can expect from it, and how, if you're in the US, you can get involved testing it out. We then get into a bit of WordCamp news. The new WordCamp US dates have been announced, and also they're looking for speakers for WordCamp Asia. We then get into, well, a few little bits rounding off. We talk about Beaver Builder's new update. We talk about some nice new AI. And right at the end, a very brief conversation about why people don't talk about their salaries. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Very nice to have you with us, joining us. If you fancy making this a far more interesting experience, then go out and tweet it or something like that. You know, go to whatever social platform it is that you love. And here's the URL for that. It's wpbuilds.com/live, wpbuilds.com/live. And you never know, we may get some of your comments on the screen later. I am joined, as always, this is episode number 222, by the way. I'm joined, as always, by one of my co-hosts, the ever-present Michelle Frechette. Matt Mullenweg said that basically she's the hardest working person, I'm going to say, in WordPress. What was his exact words?
He called me the busiest woman in WordPress.
Oh, it's busiest. Sorry, I've slightly butchered that. But yeah, we're joined, as so often is the case, by Michelle Frechette, and I'll go through her full biography. She's the Director of Community Engagement for Stellar WP at Liquid Web. Oh, you've written it in there. The busiest woman in WordPress, according to Matt Mullenweg.
It has to be in my bio now.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly. I think it should be a T-shirt. In addition to her work at Stellar WP, Michelle is the podcast barista at WPCoffeeTalk.com. She's the co-founder of underrepresentedintech.com, creator of WPCareerPages.com, lots of .coms, the president for the board of BigOrangeHeart.org, director of community relations and contributor at poststatus.com, author, business coach, and a frequent organizer and speaker at WordPress events. She lives outside Rochester, New York, where she's an avid nature photographer. And if you want to find out more about her on a personal level, you can go to meetmichelle.online. Thank you for joining us as a co-host again. Really appreciate it, Michelle.
Always good to be here.
Thank you. We're also joined, let's just go round the screen in the sort of order it's presented. Next up, we got Marcus. How are you doing, Marcus Burnett?
Great. How are you?
Yeah, really good, Marcus. Well, in fact, actually, there is some commonality here, isn't there? This time last week, we were more or less all of us hanging out in exactly the same place. I hadn't really thought about that, but look, yeah, we all went to WordCamp US, which was really nice. I met Marcus there as well. And Marcus is a part of the GoDaddy Pro events and community team. He's one of the co-hosts of the Do the Woo podcast and a team rep for the WordPress photo directory. How did your contributor day thing for the photo directory go? Was that fun?
Yeah, it was great. We had a little bit of internet stability issues, reliability issues in the building, so we decided to go for a photo walk. And so We grabbed our gear, walked around the town and country, and snapped away. Had some good conversations along the way about how we can push some of the things forward. So I think it was great. Highly
Oh,
productive.
that's really, yeah, you could totally pivot. You didn't need online, which is kind of nice. Yeah, that's great. Anyway, so there we are, Marcus Burnett. And finally, joining us at a sort of late edition. I don't mean it to sound the way that came out, but we did have somebody, Sean Hesketh was going to join us, but he's unfortunately unwell. And I would really, really like to thank Amber Hines for stepping in at the last minute. How are you doing, Amber?
I'm doing great. You noticed my little I'm going to change my comment to a dash because everyone else had a dash there just a second ago.
Oh, no.
It's been a while since I've been on. I got to remember.
Yeah, no, you got to do it right. You got to do it right.
How do I fit in?
Yeah, thank you. Amber is suffering from slight technical problems, and so the camera is not the usual one. But to me, it still looks fine, Amber, to be honest. It looks really good. So Amber is the CEO of Equalize Digital, Inc., a certified B Corp specializing in WordPress accessibility, maker of the Accessibility Checker plugin, and lead organizer of the WordPress Accessibility Meetup and WP Accessibility Day conference. You are going to have to school me, Amber, because I honestly don't know what a certified B Corp is. What's a B Corp?
So a B Corp is a for-profit company that is organized for the benefit of more than just the shareholders. So it has a triple bottom line. So it benefits the shareholders, benefits the employees, and benefits the broader community. And there is a nonprofit organization that you can go through a whole process in order to become certified. So they do a ton of reviewing of everything from your employee handbook to your financials to just a whole bunch of different practices that you have out in the world and within your organization. And then if you get a certain point, you are able to be certified.
So it's a full-on, it's not just the thing which you stick on there. It really is a proper endeavor to get that certification. That's nice.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 months to get the certification.
Yeah. Oh, bravo. I'm not going to say Amber and I only will know about this, but I'm not going to say awesome, Amber. I'm just going to try and we had a long discussion.
I've been trying not to say awesome quite as much since our conversation late at night at work.
We had a fun conversation in a bar. Let's just leave it that way.
It is extraordinary, but it is not awesome.
We'll settle for that. Cameron Jones says, "Who are these people?" Hello, Cameron. Cameron's joining us as he always does from Australia. What is this channel? It's been so long I don't recognize it. Yeah, 3 weeks, Cameron. That is to say, there have been 3 weeks gap. Just because of travel and things. I went on holiday with my family and then was WordCamp US, which just crossed out 2 of the weeks. But we're back. So that's great. And I don't know who this Facebook user is, which will lead me to a comment in a moment. But sorry, missed the beginning. Are the comments banned today because of the funeral? I am not going there. But they say only half in jest. The way you are going to identify yourself, if you want to drop into Facebook, that's fine. But the Facebook platform does one thing right. And it does the anonymization of things unless you specify you want to tell us who you are. I say one thing right, that's highly inflammatory, isn't it? But you need to carry out one additional step if you want us to know what your face looks like or your avatar and your name. And that is to go to chat.restream.io/FB. It'll be in the post right at the top of where you're viewing this. And if you do that, then we can see who you are. So whoever that person was didn't. But we also have Peter Ingersoll joining us from Connecticut. Hello, Peter. We've also got Courtney. Hey, Cameron. Hey, Peter. Courtney, we're gonna mention the bit that you pushed in my direction the other week. So hopefully that'll help out a little bit. Oh, it's Peacher. Oh, Peacher, you're on as well. God, this is weird. Yeah, that's really unusual. And Peter says, "Hey, Courtney." Well, very nice. Nice to have you all with us. Let's get stuck into the main event. What we're supposed to be here talking about. First off, we're WP Builds. I don't know if you know this, by the way, but WP Builds, we are actually sponsored by Marcus's company, GoDaddy Pro. You can see it there on the main website. I would say about 5 months ago, they decided to take out a full year's sponsorship of WP Builds and fully keep the lights on for a full year. And I'm just incredibly delighted. So the logo's there and all of those kind of things, but it's not often that we have somebody from GoDaddy Pro on. But Marcus, bravo, and thank you very much for helping us out. Really appreciate it.
Very happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's us. Now, few bits and pieces. I'm just going to breeze through this one because it's not really something that we need to discuss, I don't think, unless somebody's got something to mention. This kind of just happens toward the tail end of when I was deciding to take a bit of time off. And it was released on the 14th of September. And it was a video of the great Justin Tadlock, who, as far as I knew, didn't actually have a body. He was everywhere, but very rarely was his face to be seen. I don't know if he deliberately didn't want to go on videos and things like that, but he didn't. And he's got a new role at Automatic. He's one of the developer advocate. I'm not sure what the exact title is, but he works between the developers and the community. And one of the things that he's trying to do is to get people aware of what's coming in version 6.1 of WordPress. And so to that end, there was an hour-long recording with all of the great and the good bits that are going to be recorded. So it featured the likes of, I think Rich Table was on there. You also had Jonathan DeRosiers, I think, and Marcus Ventura and various other people were on the screen, just sort of showing, really. And so there's a lot coming down the pipe in 6.1. You can see things here. It says things like a new default theme, which is going to be interesting, refined template experience, fluid typography, improved consistency, and loads of things around block locking and all of that kind of stuff. In other words, it's a fairly significant change. There's a lot of things coming down the pipe. And this video, of all the things that I've seen, kind of touches on all of the bits and pieces. So if you are curious about 6.1, go and check this post out. I will link to it in the show notes, but it's a piece by Chloe Bringman entitled 6.1 Product Walkthrough Recap, and she was just resurfacing that video. So Marcus, Amber, or indeed Michelle, if you've got anything to say about that, interrupt me now. If not, I'll go on to the next bit. Okay, that's fine.
I have not watched this video.
Oh, well, it's actually.
So I guess I have something on my to-do list for this week.
Yeah, the weird thing is it's exactly an hour long. I mean, how good is Justin? He's like really good at everything. He was given an hour, and the video is literally an hour long. It's not 1 second too long, not 1 second too short. It's just perfect, as with all things that he touches. Okay, enough slapping of Justin Tadlock's back. Let's go for this one. This is Matt Mullenweg, who last week, sounds like hot off the back of San Diego's WordCamp US, he got into the discussion all about whether WebP should be part of core. Now, for those of you that don't follow images all that closely, I confess I don't really. I know there's JPEGs and I know there's PNGs and I know that there's now WebPs as well. There was some discussion as to whether or not WebP should be like the core image file type in WordPress, such that whenever you uploaded something, for example, like a JPEG, it would get converted to WebP. On the face of it, it's a really good idea because typically I think they're about 20% smaller than, equivalent JPEGs and so on and so forth. But it got kiboshed. It seems that that's no longer coming. And Matt has said basically, and I quote, "I've been reading through the conversation and issues here. I'm interested in supporting new formats and improving performance. But I think this change being pushed to default users when they upgrade to 6.1 is a lot for right now. I'm happy for support for working for WebP and HEIC, which I believe is like what your iPhone takes. That's another image format, to stay in core, as we should be liberal with what we accept, but not change to convert everything to WebP when JPEGs are uploaded." And I just don't know what you thought about this. I thought it was actually a really good idea. On the face of it, I can't see any reason not to do this, but yeah, discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat just from I work with clients to optimize their websites. Yep. And it's like, if you want to feed the Google monster, you sometimes have like this is a low hanging fruit, right? So I was a little bit surprised that it got held back, but I mean, if it's not ready, it's not ready. I guess maybe he's decided that it's not the most important thing from a performance standpoint, and there's other things to do, or maybe there's problems that I'm not aware of since I don't really follow the performance team. But
yeah, it's kind of interesting, and it'll lead us on in a moment to talking about something called canonical plugins, which I confess was quite a new idea to me when I first read about it the other day. But I think 98%. I was by pure coincidence, I was interviewing Adam Silverstein from Google the other day, and he works on the team that handle, I think he's on the performance team, along with likes of Felix Arntz and so on. And he told me that 98% of browsers now support WebP out of the box. So it's pretty edge. There's a couple of, I think, email clients that still don't support it, but 98% do. And it's basically older versions of Safari which are the holdups. So from a technical point of view, it doesn't seem like there's an impediment to doing this. Maybe it simply is, like you said, Amber, a question of resources and the fact that, I don't know, maybe there just isn't enough time to get this one through in a way that it's going to be perfectly usable. But I do think that if you are going to upload something which is up to 20% bigger, let's say a JPEG, I feel that we should have this at some point. So anyway, if Marcus and Michelle have anything to offer, let's go for that. Otherwise, I'll move on to the canonical bit.
Yeah, I think the one hang up that I've seen is like when social networks pull an image from a site that they struggle with WebP files currently. And so that would break all of that. But I think having WebP built in as being allowed would be great. Let people go ahead and start uploading WebP images without necessarily converting all JPEGs to WebP right off the bat.
So do you mean that, say, for example, if I create a blog post and I upload a WebP and it's the featured image, are you saying that, well, let's use Facebook as the example, there's a potential conflict there and you would just get a non-image that just wouldn't be something that came across with your post?
Yeah, last I saw it was the social network struggled to pull WebP featured images in and display them properly. So that may be one thing that's still lagging as far as compatibility, not just the browsers themselves being able to show them.
Courtney Robertson just made a comment. She said she thinks the social network previews were resolved, still display original format. Oh, I see. So there's some sort of fallback. Is that okay? So if not a JPEG, if not a PNG, they serve up a JPEG. That was my understanding, at least, anyway. Sorry, Amber.
No, that's just what I was going to say, because I think SVGs are the same way. Like Facebook and they have a really hard time if the website only has SVGs on it. And so, but my thought is, why don't you just make the open graph image that's not actually visible to anyone, but is linked in the head, a JPEG, and then that might solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like sorry, Michelle, I don't know if you had anything to say to that.
No, I didn't have anything to add.
No, that's okay. So whatever the thing is, Matt has decided that, okay, time to stall on that one. So that's what's happening. I'll just quickly add Courtney's other comment in. Courtney again. Also, a default to display whatever image format shows the smallest data. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, so all right. The fact though is that Matt's decided to pull it, and it raises the question here. I'll just pop it back up on the screen because a little bit further that he wrote. This is an excellent territory for canonical plugins, a concept I think every make team should be exploring a lot more as a place to experiment and push functionality, much like we have had with MP6 and Gutenberg in the past. And that whole idea was then picked up by Sarah Gooding in the WP Tavern on the 12th of September. Her article was penned with the title, Matt Mullenweg Renews Push for Canonical Plugins. And I confess, I really didn't know too much about canonical plugins, but it would appear that at some point in the fairly distant past, 2009, this idea of a canonical plugin came about. And essentially, I'm going to quote because the description here by Jen Milo is significantly better than I could come up with on the fly. So here we go. It's fairly lengthy. Bear with me. Canonical plugins would be plugins that are community developed, so multiple developers, not just one person. So that's one important point. It's got to be more than an individual, and address the most common functionality requests with superlative execution. I'm glad they didn't use the word awesome. These plugins would be GPL and live in the WordPress.org repo and would be developed in close connection with WordPress core. There would be a very strong relationship between core and these plugins that ensured that A, the plugin code would be secure and the best possible example of coding standards, and B, the new versions of WordPress would be tested against these plugins prior to release to ensure compatibility. Forgive me, I've only got a sentence or two more to go. There would be a screen within, so this is a big change to the UI. There would be a screen within the plugin section of the WordPress admin to feature these canonical plugins as a kind of editor's choice or verified guarantee. And these plugins would be a true extension of WordPress core, in terms of compatibility, security, and support. So, in other words, stuff which, let's say, 30% of us really think would be in core. Well, the barrier to entry now, in my understanding, is broadly speaking, if something is needed by 80% of the people, then it's ripe for going into core. But something, for example, like the WebP that we've just been talking about, maybe that's not for everybody, maybe 20 or 30 or 50%. So the idea would be to have this canonical set of plugins developed with tight integration into core, checked for security, managed by a team, updated all the time. This just seems like a really curious, interesting, dare I say it, like essential idea. And the fact that there's no kind of like upsell going on. It's not like you're going to introduce a ton of adverts or whatever may come along for the ride with that. And the fact that it's not just one person. So, should somebody get disinterested in that project, hopefully there's somebody that can step in. So I'm struggling to come up with good examples. The WebP is the only one that's popping into my head, but I do think this is quite a good idea. So I'm going to shut up and throw that one out at you three.
So I have some thoughts about this. I just posted a link to Matt's article on the Make blog for Core where he talked about this. And I had some follow-up conversations for some people from the accessibility team, because on that post, if you scroll down, there's some ideas that he threw out. And for the accessibility team, he suggested an alternative admin that is better for accessibility. And the whole conversation here is that this is a little bit like the whole separate but equal, which is really separate is not equal. And so we had some conversations, and I know there were a few people with disabilities. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
a few people with disabilities who were quite upset about this suggestion that they should have to have a separate admin experience and that the core admin cannot be made better for them. So I don't know. It's kind of a side note. I don't know that he meant it that way, but
yeah, I'm just curious.
I'm just like not super great.
Yeah, I'm going to be very mindful of the fact that he wrote this word, didn't he? He wrote an alternative API, which could, I suppose, be interpreted in all sorts of different ways, couldn't it? Here's something extra. But yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, Amber. That does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think the major concept of having more of those kind of major feature plugins, I think, is interesting. There is, a thought too on who's going to develop and manage them, and how many people are on some of these various teams that are already volunteering a lot to core, and do they even have time for that?
Yeah. Yeah. So right on cue, Megan, I'm going to say it's Megan. I don't believe we've met Megan. Megan Haynes has written this comment she's on YouTube. Canonical plugin development for multilingual, which is a possible recommendation that Matt has given us, would prove too complex and laborious for free contributors. Sponsored could do it though, and really it should be done. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you, Megan. And Courtney Robertson is saying it might be a really steep ask for the various teams to maintain their own plugins, especially teams that aren't as dev-centric, which I guess is part of the thorny problem, isn't it? It's all very well to say this, and from my perspective, looking from the outside, looking in, if all of that could be achieved, it seems like a no-brainer. But now, you've got you guys starting to comment from the inside looking out, and you're raising all sorts of possible, things that might make this really difficult to do and maintain going forwards. Okay, Michelle or Marcus, anything there?
My only thoughts are whenever we start talking about taking things that are plugins and putting them into core, is we have an ecosystem that's built up almost 20 years around WordPress. And when we start to implement things that other companies are actually employing people and making money off of, that we run the risk of putting people out of business and taking income away from, not only, we can look at it as business. Well, it's just a business, but every business represents people, and every one of those people represents a home, and whether it's a family of one person like me or a family of 15 people, the ecosystem is now supporting families and supporting individuals. And when we talk about putting things in core, we talk about potentially disrupting that whole system.
Yeah, interesting point, Michelle. Thank you. Anything to throw in here, Marcus?
I wasn't a WordPresser in 2009 when the original call was thrown out there, so I'm not exactly sure what all that entails. I guess my question is what makes something about 30% good for about 30% that's not good for 80% when we're talking about like the accessibility admin? Why wouldn't we want an accessibility admin that's accessible for everyone and not just like 30%? So that's the question for me, is what would fall into this category of canonical plugins that's good for a small subset that wouldn't ultimately benefit everyone?
Yeah, I just thinking, my first initial reaction to that, Marcus, and again, this is not words inside of my head, I'm just trying to put this sort of devil's advocate position, is people, I guess, would sort of say every time we include a 30% type of thing, then we make WordPress core a little bit bigger and there's more to patch. Whereas if we've got it as little individual compartmentalized plugins, but I totally get your point. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, if I need to install 10 more plugins, though, then I have 10 more plugins I need to manage.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, isn't it? It's really interesting, the idea of keeping WordPress core completely lean. But then I do feel the idea of a subset of plugins called canonical plugins gives them a certain kudos. And like Michelle says, I wonder if especially if they started to cross-pollinate with things that are already commercial plugins, it does feel that, yeah, especially if the UI in WordPress had a separate featured section, you'd struggle to compete with that, I feel, if you were, I don't know, multilingual or something like that, which is obviously coming at some point fairly soon. Right, so Cameron, hello Cameron again. He says, I like the idea of canonical plugins, but I feel they'll need their own UI to be really discoverable, like the importer plugins rather than the traditional plugin install path. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just a couple of good mornings. One from Cami. Hello, Cami. Nice to see you last week for the first time. That was really nice. And hello, Adam, who turns out is a fabulous singer. So, moving on from canonical plugins. Right, this one I think is going to possibly dominate the conversation today a little bit. It's written by somebody called Michelle Frechette, which, I don't know who she is, but she sounds lovely. She's written a piece called 5 Days Without a Shower. And so, I was being a bit sarcastic there, Michelle. It's an unusual piece for a WordPress post, 5 days without a shower, but it kind of struck home. It sounds like you've had a lot of interaction on social since you posted this piece. But given its curious title, just explain what this piece was all about and what drove you to write it.
I think Amber especially would appreciate the fact that if I wrote something with a blog post title called Accessibility at WordCamp US, nobody would read it. It had to be something a little sensational, but actually honest, right? So I arrived at WordCamp US on Wednesday, and I wasn't able to shower until I got home because the hotel that was supposedly an accessible room was retrofitted to meet the bare minimum, which is that it had grab bars by both the toilet and the bathtub. But being somebody who can't step into a bathtub, who can't stand in a bathtub, and who can't sit on the floor of a bathtub, that was like, well, it looks pretty, but it's not usable, right? And so it was like the wax fruit on your grandmother's coffee table. It looks good, but if you eat it, you are going to be in trouble. Had I gotten into the bathtub, we would have needed people to get me out of it, and that would have been an embarrassing situation. It was not accessible. Even after they brought a shower chair, it still wasn't accessible. It would have been like sitting in the rain, right? So like there's no way to actually move the shower. When you stand in a shower, you move your body to the water. When you're just sitting, you can't do that. So it was a rather unpleasant experience, which is why I started that smell at WordCamp US. Yeah, that was me, because not only that, but like the deodorant I brought didn't work. So I had to actually borrow from my roommate. Otherwise it would have been a really bad situation. But it wasn't just that, right? The only doors in the entire WordCamp experience that actually opened with a push button so that I could actually access them by myself was the external doors to the event, not the doors to the hotel lobby, not the doors in any of the bathrooms, not the doors within the venue itself. Anytime I needed to go through a door, I had to ask somebody to help me or struggle to do it myself. And if you read the article, you know that I actually got stuck in the lobby bathroom for a few minutes because to be able to hold a door, move your mobility device backwards, move the door behind you, and then move forward without injuring yourself, it's not easy to do. And so, yeah, so I struggled quite a bit. And I know I wasn't the only one. I did talk to some of the other people with mobility issues who, chose not to be named, and I 100% appreciate that. But who also were struggling with doors and showers and things like that. And so I just think it's something that we as a community need to keep in mind, and retrofitting things like if you go to a restaurant and the only way to access it, because there's stairs in the front, is to go to the back and come in through the kitchen. That is not the experience that everybody else has. And so just like Amber says, we don't want separate but equal when we're looking at our dashboards or using our dashboards. I don't want to have to come in through the kitchen to experience the same things that other people experience. I don't want to get stuck in the bathroom. I don't want to have to take a front. Yes, I know women go to the bathroom in packs. That's not actually true. We're absolutely able to go to the restrooms by ourselves as long as you can get out of the restroom. And so those were some of the experiences that I had, and I thought it was important to write about them. But then also, I don't complain about things without also trying to at least bring some ideas forward for moving forward. And so the end of that article also talks about ways that we as a community can look at WordCamps and make sure that they are accessible for all.
Couple of things. Firstly, from my point of view, you're very equanimous normally, aren't you? You don't seem to stray into fits of anger online or anything like that. And I notice straight up that you've written this and there's a heavy amount of humor in it to sort of keep it light.
Because if I didn't want to cry through WordCamp, right? So I had to employ humor for myself.
So, but I want to know if you're willing to talk about this. So you've used a bit of humor to make it palatable for, I guess, to draw people toward it. Is that the actual feeling, or do you feel okay, anger is not the word I want, but that's a word which is going to come out of my mouth. So do you feel cross about this? Are you irritated?
I wouldn't say more frustrated, right?
Okay.
So you can be frustrated with something once, but then when it happens for 3, 4, 5 days in a row, that frustration starts to grow into something. I don't know what the right word for it is, but indignation maybe, or just if there were people who were trying to help, it would have turned into anger quite easily, right? But every step of the way, there were people who reached out, who tried to help, who did what they could to make it a better and a more pleasant experience. I am surrounded by people in the WordPress community who know me, who love me. Some of you might not love me. That's okay. But the people at WordCamp, I have a lot of friends. I do have a face and a voice that are known in WordPress. And I feel, for me, I don't put this burden on anybody else, but for me, I've built a platform in WordPress that I need to use to advocate for others as well. And so I feel like I have a voice in WordPress, and if I can't affect a change for people like me who struggle with doors and who have those issues when they are at an event like that, then how could somebody who doesn't have a voice advocate as strongly? And so I want to use that voice to make sure that other people are not having the same experiences that I have, and to make sure that camps that come beyond this one are better experiences, not just for me, but for others.
A lot of the commentary in the article, although certainly not limited to, but a lot of the things that you wrote were constrained to the hotel. They were about the actual venue. So it was a great big conference center, hotel. There was many rooms and layers and doors and avenues and bars and all of that kind of stuff. Are there any industries that have now just got this right? So, for example, I'm imagining that you had to go through airports and on airplanes and all of that kind of thing. I just wondered if this has been sewn up by an industry, to the point where you can happily breeze through that scenario and it's always going to be fine.
I always have the best experiences at airports.
Huh.
I do not struggle at airports at all. I can't speak for people who have other disabilities than mine. Mine is a mobility disability. But I had the most I'll tell you what, I almost cried from happiness at my TSA experience in San Diego coming home. And I've never almost cried for joy at TSA, but I actually tweeted about it and they followed up with me because I was treated with such dignity. I was taken through a process where I was assisted the whole way. I have a mobility scooter that I use. I take it right down to the door of the plane, and then I use my cane to get on the plane. They take my scooter, every airline I've used, they take the scooter, they put it down underneath. When I get off the plane, it's there waiting for me. So I have the ability to navigate through an airport on my own. I used to use wheelchair service, and then you're beholden to somebody else pushing you through an airport. You feel bad if you say, "Hey, I'd like to stop at Starbucks," or "I need to use the restroom." When you're on your own, I have the ability to do that. I actually had in one airport, I think this was out in, gosh, I don't remember now where I flew. I've flown a lot this year. But I was at a stopover, and I think it was Philadelphia. And I got up off the jet bridge. I'm in my own mobility scooter, and there's somebody like with my name, right, knowing that I'm somebody who's got a disability, and they're going to take me through the airport. And I said, I can travel faster without you beside me. Not to be rude, but it's like my legs don't work well, but I'm perfectly capable of finding the next place to go. So I didn't need assistance that way. So in that was the one time that I thought, do they think that people in wheelchairs or people with mobility issues also have the inability to navigate an airport? Because my brain works perfectly fine. It's just that my legs don't work as quickly. So I declined then. I do have a friend who is deaf who was offered, who was almost made to take a wheelchair to get to her next destination. And she's like, I can't hear the announcement, but I can see and I can walk just fine. So leave me alone. I don't need your wheelchair. So sometimes they don't get it right, but by and large, airports do a very good job and airlines do a very good job accommodating, in my experience. I know others have not had the same experience. I can only speak for my personal experience.
So I've asked a couple of rounds of questions, so I'm just going to hand it over to Amber and Marcus.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I think it highlighted for me how important it is to bring people with disabilities into the process early, because accessibility means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Like, I wasn't aware. I never noticed you smelling, and I wasn't aware of any of the issues, right, until I saw the article, which made me really appreciate that you went out there and wrote it. I saw went through my co-presenter and friend Alex Stein through his experiences, and he, for anyone who's not familiar with him, is blind. And he was like, the building is huge, but the accessibility on his end was fine. But it's also interesting because he was telling me he might write a post on his LinkedIn about his experiences in airports and how bad it is. Right. Exactly. And so, because for him, he relies on a guide to help him find places, and frequently they'll take him and sit him next to the place and then they leave. And he said they're not supposed to leave for more than 30 minutes, but they do. And if he has to go to the bathroom, he can't find the bathroom. Yeah. Right. And he like tries to avoid getting there early. And I was afraid he was going to miss his flight. And he's like, nope. I can't get there any earlier, right? So, but I do think it is a conversation that needs to be had, which is how can we make it easier for event organizers who I think have good thoughts in their heart but aren't aware of these things. And maybe we need to look at the documentation on the for WordCamp organizers or for meetup organizers. And we're put together something, which we've kind of started a conversation about that on Twitter. Maybe it's a separate site, but I still feel like some of it should be in the actual documentation about like, what are the questions you should ask? Because clearly it's not enough to just ask a hotel, are you accessible? Because I think their answer is yes. But in reality, it wasn't, right? Yeah. And I mean, this came up a bunch with the meetup that I run. We do live captions. For a time we had ASL interpreters, but we haven't been able to find the sponsors. And it's accessibility now. It's like we have to have these things if we can. But the foundation is like, well, unfortunately, we can't pay for that, right? So now we have to go find sponsors to help cover the cost. But it would be great if every virtual event had live captions and if everyone knew how important that was.
Mm-hmm. And I've had so many people reach out to me privately. If you just look at my Twitter, you'll see lots of people commented publicly as well. But I had people reach out to me privately. Alex actually reached out to me and said, here's my phone number, Michelle. If you ever run into a problem, I know how to advocate. Call me. He's so sweet. I appreciate that.
Awesome. I love him.
He is awesome. And then the CTO of my own company at Liquid Web, Joe Osterling, reached out to me and said, that he cried reading it because he had no idea what I was going through there, and that if I in the future to contact him, he would move mountains to get me what I needed. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that there's so many people who are willing to help in this, when those situations are happening, because we absolutely need advocates when we can't advocate for ourselves. I think I'm pretty good at advocating for myself, but there are times that your frustration level just renders you almost incapable of just dealing anymore. But to get in front of these things and not have to have people intercede in the heat of the moment is what we want, right? We want an experience that as soon as you approach the front door, you have a button you can open, or a doorman that's there, whatever the experience is, so that there are things in place where we don't have to look for assistance and find ways to circumnavigate what exists to be able to accommodate everybody who is there and has the right to be there. And so like I said, I can only write from my own perspective. I can't write from the perspective of somebody who's blind or deaf. I don't have those perspectives. I can only imagine what those kinds of things. I'm glad that we had captioning there. I don't know what other issues somebody who's deaf might have needed. Even if just an interpreter to be able to have lunch at a group of people, at a table where you don't know anybody. So there's lots of opportunities for us to learn and grow. And I don't know that any one person is going to have the ability to know how to navigate all of that. But at least we have to start the conversation and start to put into place opportunities and whatever, I can't think of, guidelines heading into events, so that we can make sure that everybody has a similar experience and the best possible experience that they can.
Marcus, anything to add?
I don't have a ton to add to that. I just wanted to say that I appreciated Michelle's honesty in writing that piece. It's kind of hard to put yourself out there sometimes, and so I appreciated the honesty there. And then, as easy as it is to slam people, I also appreciated, and this is just who Michelle is, adding people's names that were particularly helpful in that piece.
Let's do it. Let's
giving them the due credit for being upstanding citizens and very helpful, friendly people, because it's so easy to slam companies and people that are doing it wrong, especially when you're frustrated and writing a post that I'm sure just boils the frustration again. Even though you're back home and away from all of that, you get to relive the entire thing again. So taking the time to really call out the people that were helpful, I think, was fantastic too. It made me rethink, go back in my head and rethink the room that I was in. I was in a different hotel, but try to think about what things would have been difficult for, mobility or people that don't have eyesight or hearing or whatever else, right? And just sort of think through how they would have navigated the room that I was in. And it wasn't necessarily specified as an accessible room, but nevertheless there should be some level of accessibility in any room. So I kind of got a chance to sort of sit back and think about how that would have what that experience would have been like. And I did see some of the conversation on Twitter, and I think getting some of that down from everyone in the community, getting those things in a list where we can kind of tackle those things as the events are being organized is just hugely critical.
So let's name them.
The one person I forgot
can I
to
just
name,
name the names on your list quickly? Just because I think.
but let me tell you who I forgot to add was you, Nathan, because
Oh.
you moving my scooter for me was the funniest thing that happened in all of WordCamp US.
Can I tell you the story? Can I tell people the story? It was
I want to
Absolutely.
hear the story.
we went to a restaurant and the scooter was Michelle arrived on the scooter. I don't believe you had any problem getting in to the restaurant at the beginning. No, so we arrived and then Michelle needed to discard the scooter at the table, and it was in the aisle, so it needed to be moved. And so I decided I would move it, and the quickest way to move it is to ride it. But I didn't realize there was a speed option. Didn't realize there was a way of making it go quickly. So I pressed the button which makes it move, and it went about a centimeter a second. And so
I had turned it to turtle mode, because usually people get on it and don't realize how fast it can go, so they don't know how to control that, and they lurch forward and hit people and hit things. Yep. So I turned it all.
That's where I thought this story was going. Nathan knocked over an entire table of food.
Yeah,
it was just me just moving a centimeter in just the slowest, most.
With an awkward stare, I assume.
Yeah. I was just kept waving. Bye. But yeah, that was a very pleasurable moment, I must admit. That was a lovely evening, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, let's name the names, because I think that's important. So I know some of these people and I don't know some of the others, so I'm sorry if I butcher your names, but Michelle had fantastic experiences with Michelle Butcher-Jones, Mark Westgard, who was actually with us on that evening, Kimberly Lipari, I'm going to say, Lipari, Ryan Marks, Topher DeRosier, the entire Stellar WP and Nexus team, the Post Status team, and also Pagely, where they had a great big party on a really very big boat, and it looks like you had a great experience there. You, as you said, you mentioned some of the things that you feel the event did. Also, here's the list on the screen. You can read the article yourself. By the way, it's on poststatus.com, and the article's called 5 Days Without a Shower. So you mentioned aisles and rows were wide. The microphones are accessible for the Q&A sessions. The live transcriptions were really good, and something about the box lunches being available for you and easy to hand, and people were there checking you in and out. However, you've obviously got some things which you think can be dealt with. And so I think this the first point that you make is really interesting to me, because it's genuinely the only way I would know how to deal with this. And that would be in much the same way that I may go to Amber Hines, Equalize Digital, and say, I have a website. I would like it to be more accessible than it is now. You're the expert. Please, will you take that on? Your first suggestion is to employ an accessibility expert who obviously knows the ins and outs, and presumably doesn't just come at it from your perspective, mobility, but would also come at it from the perspective of, well, all the perspectives. I don't know, Amber, maybe you've got more insight into that. Such people exist. There is an industry of people who put events on and get accessibility, as part of their remit.
So the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, they have certifications that focus on accessibility in the built environment, not just in the virtual environment or the web. And so I am, as a member, I'm aware of some of the stuff they talk about, and they have training sessions, all that stuff. I don't focus too much on that, but that would be my guess as the first place to go to try and find somebody who's certified in that, maybe. I mean, one would hope that event organizers would have contacts on this, but my guess is probably they don't, unfortunately. It might be like the reality of many web developers or web agencies don't think about accessibility. So it might be the same thing for event organizers, but I would think that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay. And then another suggestion would be to add an accommodations role to all the WordCamps. So somebody whose job it is to just deal with the accommodation side of things. That's a curious one. Michelle, you develop this a lot more. But number 3 is checking each person. Oh, no, that's something. Okay. But yeah. So the idea of employing some accessibility expert, but also having somebody on the WordCamp team whose job it is entirely just to deal with the accommodation side. Yeah,
some of the accommodations that were not met well for others was the food situation, as far as like halal food, kosher food, soy-free, dairy-free, those kinds of things. I was hearing from people that they couldn't eat what was provided because they couldn't be certain that their allergen was not part of the meal. And so I think that we really need to be cautious about that too. It's just as important as me being able to enter a door. Somebody who's at an event being able to eat at that event is just as important. So I think that somebody on the team, and it can be part of the attendee experience team, but it should be their only role. That person should be dedicated to making sure that anything that comes in through those registrations as a special accommodation need, whether it's accessibility or food allergies, food needs, those should all be dealt with very kindly and very intentionally.
Okay, I think universally a fabulous piece, Michelle.
Thank
Not
you.
only because it was probably a difficult one to write, but also highlighting for folk like me who basically need it highlighting. So appreciate it. Thank you very much. A couple of comments around there. The first one I had a little while ago was Michelle again saying that she was really happy that you wrote this, but disappointed that you had to write it. Courtney, who I guess is hosting WordPress events, she said she would love a checklist for those hosting parties. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Jess Frick. Hello, Jess. I love the idea of paying an accessibility expert. So what we just talked about to help with these large events. Yeah, you feel like, especially the large events, there's no
These
wiggle room
flagships,
there, is there? Yeah. It's an added cost. But I choose that over a WordCamp Frisbee or something like that. Interesting. I know that for my school, my children who just go to a regular school in the UK, when they do just any kind of outing, I know that the school staff have to go very often on their own dime. I don't mean literally that, but they have to go in their own time, and they have to go and check this stuff out to make sure for 100% certain. I mean, so I guess it can be done. But hiring an expert, don't think that would be asking too much, says Patricia Shetler. Hello, Patricia. Another new face. This is nice. Wouldn't be asking too much. What could be 1%? And she also says any event could use that person taking care of special requests. It's just lazy, she says. Okay. Thank you for all the commentary on that. Really good piece. So let's move on. We're going to go here. This is firmly in Marcus's domain here because, as we said right at the top, Marcus is working for GoDaddy. And GoDaddy, Marcus, first of all, forgive me if this news isn't exactly brand new. How long ago was it that managed WooCommerce stores came on the horizon for GoDaddy? I know it's a sort of preview at the moment, but has this been in the making for a long time? And then we can get into what it actually means.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll come as much surprise that I think we've sort of been working on this since the Pagely acquisition. I think it was even in the press release for the Pagely acquisition that there was some kind of WooCommerce SaaS product coming. We didn't do a great job of keeping that a secret. So, I mean, it's been coming. WordCamp US, we officially put the name out there, and it's in preview currently. We're looking for people to give it a test run, give us some feedback so we can make it everything that it needs to be before we make it generally available to everyone. But yeah, WordCamp US is kind of when we decided to sort of officially announce it.
So it's called Managed WooCommerce Stores. It's a GoDaddy product. It would appear that at the moment, at least anyway, I tried to click on the link and I was met with a page saying quite rightly that I'm kind of not entitled to make use of it yet because I'm not based in the US, because clearly on the page there in bold it says it's available to US based customers only. And the text that I'm reading on the page here, to quote, Managed WooCommerce Stores is for established businesses, so there's something, that seek to rapidly grow by selling in multiple channels. It eliminates the need to maintain a variety of complex e-commerce applications or cycle through add-on features for desired functionality. I'm going to keep quoting if you don't mind. It's powered by e-commerce software that combines WordPress flexibility with an intuitive user experience on a highly performant, fully managed platform, which I believe is the Pagely architecture. And it is a new e-commerce platform that combines today's best performance, functionality, and scalability. Oh, yeah, there we go. Using the raw power of Pagely's enterprise managed WordPress platform, high performance on AWS-backed infrastructure with, looks like, a 99.95% uptime guarantee. So what are we actually getting here? Is it... So obviously we've got the hosting side that we just read about at Pagely. What's the rest of it? Is it like a unique dashboard? Does it look like WordPress? Is it a collection of plugins? Are some of them custom? Just, Marcus, just tell us quick what it is really. Yeah. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. That was a lot of big fancy words in a blog article. But so managed WooCommerce stores is WordPress and WooCommerce fully managed for you, right? So you don't have to worry about updating those or issues with any of those. It includes, all the wonderful backups and all of that, the reliability. So it's a culmination of course, the recent acquisitions for GoDaddy, right? So Point, I believe, was the first one acquired, and so that now powers GoDaddy payments, which I can talk about a little bit too. And then Skyverge, which of course was the one that I was a part of as well, and came to GoDaddy, and that's going to be really more the software side, and then of course Pagely, with the cloud infrastructure of the hosting itself. So managed WooCommerce stores is sort of a culmination of all of those things together, right? We have Pagely powering everything. Skyverge has sort of beefed up the default WooCommerce. It still looks like WordPress and WooCommerce, but some of the things that we think should be built in are now built in, like sequential order numbers and cost of goods. There's gift certificates, and that's all built in and not extra plugins that you need to purchase or manage, for that fact. So there's some cost savings there, and also some maintenance savings there. And then the Skyverge plugins that haven't been built in are still available as part of the package as well. So you can download any of those and use them. That's like WooCommerce memberships and local pickup plus, the social login stuff. And Skyverge had 65 plugins, extensions to WooCommerce, something like that. Like I said, a few of them have been built in, along with a couple of other just features like shipment tracking that we thought every WooCommerce owner is going to need. And then GoDaddy payments is going to be critical for this one as well. As you alluded to earlier, this is not $1 a month hosting. This is for established businesses that are selling already. You can call them the power sellers, folks that are somewhere in the 100,000 to $1 million GMV a year. And so this is going to be larger businesses probably that are selling on WooCommerce. And so GoDaddy Payments is going to have lower fees than just about any of the other payment gateways. And when you're doing $100,000 to $1 million in sales, that the percentages, even the smaller percentages, make a difference. And so it's been kind of a long time coming with the acquisitions and Skyverge folks building things and Pagely getting the architecture ready to put this all together. And then I didn't even mention the biggest piece really is the omni-channel sales and being able to connect your WooCommerce store to things like Amazon, Etsy, Walmart, Facebook, Instagram, and have your WooCommerce store be the source of truth for the price, the description, the inventory, and all of that. So you're not having to manage 6-7 different platforms when you're selling things. That can all be managed right through your managed WooCommerce store's dashboard.
So it's like the central, it's the object of truth. It's the hub for all of the, I don't know, you've said here, eBay, Google, Walmart, Etsy, Amazon, a whole bunch of marketplaces you can be on. And it syncs all that data and you just log into one. Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, you can do all your fulfillment through WooCommerce as well.
Yep.
So when something comes in from Facebook, it shows up in your WooCommerce dashboard. You can fulfill it, mark it as shipped, and then it'll push that back out to Facebook and everything else.
Yeah. Tell me about this piece. Adam's Adam
I'm
Warner,
just
who
throwing
is a
numbers in the
colleague of
chat.
yours. Yeah. So this is GoDaddy payments.
Correct.
2.3% versus 2.9%. 2.9% is the sort of industry standard, isn't it? If you go with Square, what is it even called? Stripe. That's
Stripe.
There you
or
go.
Square and all of these kind of things. There's typically 2.9 plus a
Yeah,
small
30
smaller
cents.
charge.
You kind of take your pick. They're all just about 2.9% plus 30 cents, where GoDaddy payments comes in at 2.3% plus 30 cents.
So this is GoDaddy's tech. This is not. It's not like you've built on top of, or have you built on top of like Stripe, but negotiated a better deal in the background or something?
No, so this is directly the Point acquisition, right? Point was a payment processor that
Yep.
GoDaddy acquired before Skyverge, and Point is what powers GoDaddy payments.
Actually,
So this is not built on top of Stripe or anything else.
Yeah, you're right. If you if you are in the plus $1 million range and you are 0.6% cheaper on transaction, that really starts
Makes a
to add up.
difference at that scale.
Yeah, it's a nice holiday or something like that. Yeah, that's interesting. So where do we find it? And if we're a US customer, do you know what the process is for getting on board? And basically you're looking for people to test it out, right? It's like a beta program that you want people with current successful, for want of a better word, stores to hop on.
Yeah. Currently the best way is to just DM me and I'll get people to the right place, either on Twitter, which I'm sure I'll be in the show notes here or whatever, or on post out of Slack, make Slack, WooCommerce community Slack, WooCommerce community Facebook group. I'm kind of in all those places. So find me and I'll get you set up if you're interested.
You also make quite a comment about the sort of performance of it. I confess I don't know a lot about Pagely, but I know they were kind of like around right at the beginning, I think, of the whole managed WordPress. Maybe even they were one of the first to sort of claim that moniker. And
yeah, absolutely, and known for their infrastructure, their performance, and all of that. And that was a huge part of the baseline that we wanted for managed WooCommerce stores. So even though managed WooCommerce stores was sort of an idea before the Pagely acquisition, we knew that having that infrastructure was going to be paramount to making this successful.
Jess Frick says she's going to give it a try, which is quite nice. Sorry.
I have, Jess. Thanks.
I always wonder about this making, even with our clients, sometimes I worry about this, like making grade. Like this right here almost implies that if you host with us, you're going to have an A score, right? Which there's so much things outside of hosting that control that. You know what I mean? Like how do you control for they uploaded pictures of their products that a photographer took and they never, right? And every page has, I don't know, 20 pictures that are all 5,000 pixels wide. Like that always makes me nervous. That doesn't make you guys nervous, like putting that there?
So a couple of things to answer your question. One, that's a bit of a baseline, which most people can probably claim. The second part to that, which I didn't really go into, but is super important, is that all of these sites are also supported by the Skyverge and Pagely support teams, which of course I'm going to be a little bit biased coming in with Skyverge, and I was on the support team there, but I know how good that team is because I was on it. And this is, like I said, not $1 a month hosting. This is going to be very closely monitored for things like that. The support team is going to be proactive in reaching out to sites that are struggling, helping with performance, helping with optimizations, helping with security and accessibility and all of those things. And I know just how good the Skyverge and Pagely teams are. And this gets you basically direct access to those teams as well. You're not, you're going to kind of bypass the first couple of tiers of WordPress support and go right to the WordPress and WooCommerce experts. And of course, we're sort of growing those teams. We want more of GoDaddy to be WordPress and WooCommerce experts, so that will get larger and larger as we go. But you're going to have direct access to those teams, and those teams are going to be proactive in sort of seeing, all right, this site looks like it's struggling, or we're doing okay across the board, but these couple of sites are not hitting that reliability. Something's happening with those. Let's reach out to those customers and see if there's anything we can do to help.
That's really cool. I mean, that's what I kind of think managed hosting should be, right? When in a lot of cases, it's like they update your WordPress for you and there's some extra security, but they don't pay any attention to your site. So I'm very impressed to hear that. That's neat.
Yeah, that is neat. Can I ask about the onboarding process? So let's say I come to you with a site, regardless of how big or successful it is, but here I am. I've got my site and I want to give this a try. Do you
Mhm.
manage the migration and all of that, or is there a process that I've got to manually go through?
Nope, we do handle the initial migration over from a site as well. So once you get signed up, we'll have the support team will reach out, ask you if you have a site to migrate over. If you do, we'll handle the migration as well to get you started.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's that whole bit of the WordPress ecosystem, isn't there, which is on WordPress, and then inside of that which is on WooCommerce, doing trade, got shops and stores and what have you. Then inside of that, there's the whole, well, we can manage it ourselves. We've got our own team, we've got our own development team. We're really capable. We're fine. And then there's the other, which I would firmly sit in, which would be I just take my hand and just do it for me, because I don't want the effort of having it go wrong and have to be awake at 3 a.m. freaking out. So this feels like it's squarely in there, and you really have touched so many bases with that. You've got your own payment solution, you've got the Pagely infrastructure behind it, you've got all those connections, and yeah, no doubt more to come. So
yeah, I kind of look at it the way that Apple controls the hardware and the software, so they can kind of fine tune everything to work the best that it possibly can.
Yep.
And having all of those pieces allows us to be able to do that as well.
Jess Frick, who works for Pressable, which is another WordPress hosting solution. She said, never underestimate somebody's ability to do bad things with good hosting. Right. And then Adam.
That's tweetable.
Yeah, that's tweetable. Adam says, alert, this person just uploaded a 3 gigabyte image. Yeah. Like
and that person
Danger Will Robinson.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds small.
Yeah, but
I think I've been on sites where I've seen like 10 gigabyte images.
Are they the kind of things that you would want in your, like, as an alert in your dashboard, right? If you upload an image which is clearly just absurd. I know that WordPress can do a job of compressing it, but I do think things like that would be quite useful. Really, do you really want to upload this image? Have you any idea what you've just done? Can we try making it a bit smaller first? And here's some software which will help you with that. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. This looks really cool. And we will no doubt be coming back to it in the near future. Michelle, have you got anything you want to throw in there, or shall I move on?
In my days as a freelancer and turning sites over to customers, I would say 100% that e-commerce sites were the most difficult things to hand off to a customer. And having a solution like this would have been amazing 10 years ago for me. So, kudos to you. Hats off. I'm happy to see more hosts doing things like this, to be able to truly enable people to run a site that works well for them and causes less frustration. So great job.
Yeah.
Nice.
And to be clear, there's still some work to be done. That's why it's in preview. So please do reach out if people are interested. We do want feedback so we can make it everything it needs to be.
Okay, so that is managed WooCommerce stores, which is in preview from GoDaddy Pro. The article that you can find is on the GoDaddyPro.com website. And if you just Google what I've just said, you're probably going to find it. Okay, it's changed tack again. We're sort of running fairly short of time, but I think we'll manage to squeeze most of what I intended to get in. This one's really quick, really. It's just to say that WordCamp US obviously took place. We've talked about it at great length already, but that there is a new, as one passes, another one. I nearly really put my foot in. I'll tell you after the show what I nearly said, and it wouldn't have gone down well on this day in particular. There is going to be the next WordCamp US held in 2023, which is going to be on the East Coast this time, National Harbor, Maryland, which apparently is a waterfront convention center. 20 minutes from Washington, D.C., and it's going to be on August the 23rd to the 25th. And those of you that love to get this stuff pre-planned, well, there you go. You got the dates. You can now start planning on it all. I don't suppose anybody's got anything to add to that, but let's move on to this one, which is a very similar piece, actually. This is WordCamp Asia, has yet to happen. Supposed to happen in 2019, and then, well, we all know what happened with the world. That got in the way, but it's coming back 17th to the 19th of February, 2023. Look at this. They are after some speakers. Now, I honestly don't know what the guidelines are around speaking at WordCamp Asia, because typically when I've gone to a WordCamp, everybody's speaking in English, because I've generally been in a country where that just seemed to work. But anybody got any thoughts on that? Is it all in
Did you
English?
see-
This is in English, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you see the follow-up piece where they were asking for more submissions? They're having a hard time getting local speakers, I think, and also maybe females. It's been a while since I looked at that.
Diversity, yeah.
But yeah, Rob Howard actually shared it on, I think he shared it on Twitter, and he was commenting because we were talking about he has a good piece about some of the challenges with expecting speakers to go for free and speak and have to pay for their airfare and their hotel and all of that stuff, and how that puts people who aren't sponsored by companies or don't work for big employers at a disadvantage. It can make it really hard, especially for freelancers. And then he was highlighting like that piece where they were saying they were having a hard time getting, like they have a lot of people sponsored by companies that are outside of Asia applying to speak because it's like a vacation, right? That their employer pays for.
Right. Look, here's a couple of interesting thoughts. I don't know if you've ever been to Thailand or any of the countries surrounding Thailand, but if you listen to the language, Thai in the particular case of Thailand, but all sorts of other ones, there's no overlap between it and English. It's completely impenetrable to somebody like me. And so the reason I'm saying that is because the reverse must be true. If you are from Thailand, it must be extraordinarily difficult to be able to speak in English without enormous enterprise and endeavor. Maybe you were taught it at school or something like that. But it does raise a question, doesn't it? If WordCamp Asia is basically a bunch of people speaking in English, well, I get that because it seems to be the lingua franca, but nevertheless, it seems a bit curious, doesn't it?
I mean, maybe that's an argument for not having a WordCamp Asia, because there's so much diverse languages, and maybe it needs to be more like, I mean, maybe it needs to be a WordCamp China and a WordCamp, more country specific in that way.
Yeah.
Although I know there's been back and forth about whether country WordCamps are allowed, even though WordCamp US exists.
That debate just goes on and on, doesn't it? The other interesting point that you made there was about the flights and accommodation, and there's a piece of me which kind of feels that if you've made the grade and your presentation was accepted, because that's there's quite a barrier there. You've got to put a lot of thought into what you're going to say and present it, and all of that. I do wonder if plane tickets and accommodation mightn't be a nice trade-off there. Anyway, they're looking for people
or even the accommodation. Yeah, I mean, It would be great to do everything right, but even if it was like the accommodation and the food while you're here would be covered, like that would certainly help a lot of people.
Here we go. There's another comment from Adam from GoDaddy. We just submitted our interest in financially supporting underrep speakers to try and help with this, as well as others, I assume. Okay, that'd be interesting to flesh out what your thoughts are on there, Adam, and whether it addresses some of the things that Amber was just talking about. That's curious. Thank you. They're looking for people in the following areas: accessibility, business, community, careers, design, development, marketing, and writing. So, the typical load. But if you go to asia.wordcamp.org, you can hunt things out over there. And by the looks of it, you have got about 11 more days to submit your presentation, or at least the outline of it. Okie dokie. Right, here's an interesting one. Again, apologies, it's probably the second bit of news which is a little bit more stale than typical because I've been off for a bit. But I did want to raise this one, especially as nice coincidence. Amber was on today. I'm sure she's got some things to say about this. Yoast, the popular SEO plugin, in their premium version 19.2, they have a new inclusive language analysis tool. It's in beta. Apparently, all of Yoast happens on your infrastructure, so none of this is versing back and forth over the wire, which may be of interest to you. But the idea of this is that you may be inadvertently or otherwise, you may be putting people off your content or going down in search engine rankings because of the style of language you're using. It may not be as inclusive as it should be. And again, quick quote from Yoast team: inclusive language avoids expressions that are considered to express or imply an ideas that are sexist, racist, otherwise biased, prejudiced, or denigrating to any particular group of people. And then there's some parenthesis there. What inclusive language actually looks like varies based on standards in education, religion, and publishing. With the new inclusive language analysis in Yoast SEO Premium, we're enabling you to attract a wider audience and reduce the risk of alienating people from your content. And so I just thought this was kind of like a curious idea. You know, you've seen Yoast in the past with its little traffic light system. If it believes that a piece has achieved all of the metrics that you've enabled, you get the little green traffic light and you think, okay, I'm good to go, broadly speaking. Maybe there's some extra work to be done, but at least I've got something, you know, patting my back and saying, good job. So the idea here would be something similar, I guess, in that it will analyze your tool for particular phrases, particular words, choice of words, tenor, and so on, and then give you some guidance on that. And I just thought, I really thought this was really left field and interesting. So I'm raising it. I didn't see this one coming. So I don't know if any of you guys have got any thoughts on it, but I really like it. It seems like a cool idea.
I tested it for them and had conversations with the developers about what they were doing and looking at it. And I've reviewed the list of words and phrases too, and replacement words in English, of course, for this product. And I think it's brilliant. I know that there are going, especially in the United States, there'll be right-wing people who don't want to be woke or whatever the terminologies are now. And for those people, you can shut it off. You don't have to have it appear on your dashboard. But for the rest of us who like to be inclusive and like to make sure that our writing is non-offensive to the greater majority of our readers, I think it's brilliant. And they have when I tested it, there was a sample article that I could paste in, and you could see what those things are that were popping up, such as like a teacher talking to boys and girls. You know, like my teacher used to say, boys and girls, settle down, right? Mm-hmm. But in today's non-binary world where we aren't just speaking to boys and girls, it would suggest replacements like children and students. And so there's opportunities to make our language much more inclusive, which, obviously it's great for SEO, but it's just, more importantly, it's just better writing, and it's more inclusive writing to make sure that you are writing for everybody and not just a binary world or an abled world or a whitewashed world. And so I thought it was brilliant, and I was super excited to be asked to be part of the review of this before it went out to public.
Yeah, the things that they're looking for, the cues that they're looking for, and it may be broader than this, but they're looking for cues against these categories: age, gender, appearance, socioeconomic status. That's quite an interesting one. Race, ethnicity. I can't speak today, can I? Race, ethnicity, and culture, and disability and neurodiversity. And honestly, when I read that list, it all sounds great, but in my head, I'm thinking, okay, think of an example, Nathan. Luckily, they've given me some because I'm struggling here. So, for example, avoid using mankind as it's exclusionary. So we can all, I think of other words to put in there. Avoid using poverty-stricken as it's potentially harmful. Consider instead, what does it say? Low income was one of the alternatives suggested. Avoid using retarded as it's derogatory. Consider using an alternative such as uninformed. And yeah, they all make sense. There's more. There's a whole bunch more here. And they have that Yoast SEO red, green, and amber threshold there. So yeah, really curious. I should say, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what's Yoast's business here? And it's not. They farmed out the sort of the research into this to somebody called Maxwell Hope, who is from the University of Delaware. So presumably has some chops in this area. So that's, that I take comfort from that they've got somebody who's an expert in this area to do it. So anyway, sorry, again, I'm blabbering on. I suspect Amber has something to say specifically here.
Yeah, I spent a fair bit of time talking to them about this at WordCamp US. I think it's neat. I have not had the opportunity to try it yet. But there are a few kind of in the accessibility space. There's some checkers like Site Improve is a big one that people may have heard of, which also does this kind of language talk, and it's interesting to sort of think about what the progression could be on for this, like where could they take this beyond the inclusive language, sort of what they've set up, because there could be, which they said they don't have right now, but I easily see an adaptation where people could add other phrases that they don't want, that maybe, and then other suggestions for their company, right? So, if there's certain tech jargon that they're like, we really don't want to write this, and this is the way we say this in our company instead. And so I think that would be a neat way to add that on and expand it, where companies could then start having even more sort of brand control over some of the language that people use when they're creating content. So I especially see for like large organizations, universities, very large enterprise businesses, it could be very useful in helping to ensure that everything stays on brand. And of course, I'm definitely in the land of, it's helpful to have prompts as you're writing, right? Whether it's an SEO prompt, an accessibility check, right? Or an inclusive language. Like, it's one thing to have this checklist or this, brand guide that we've created that says, this is how we write content, or this is how we talk about people. And it's another thing to actually have it there reminding you as you're writing the content, and not being some separate document you have to go look at. It makes it easier for content creators. And so I think this is a great idea, and I'm very excited about it, and to see what the general feedback is from them as they move through their beta.
Marcus, anything?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to test it out, but it sounds like it's just the right amount of integrated, right? I want to still have full control over my content if I want to say something specifically for a reason, but also I want something that tells me, like, I want to be able to learn, right? So if it's doing it for me and just swapping things out, I don't learn anything. But if it's making suggestions as I go along, then I get to learn as well. So I think it's the right amount of there. Prompt me, let me know, help me learn from the process, help me correct that in the moment, but then also correct that long term mentally.
Yeah, I think that's the curious bit for me as well, is the teaching bit, because it may be that by just benignly you're writing and some of this stuff creeps in and you really didn't even notice what you were writing might have that flavor to it, and just being alerted, oh, okay, that's curious, I hadn't really anticipated that. Just a quick one, it's off by default. So should you be wary of this and you don't wish to have it on, you actually have to go and find it. And it's in the settings. There's a diagram on in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes. It's in Yoast SEO settings under the features tab, and you have to toggle it on because it's off.
And I think it's only in the premium version. At least it was
says,
originally.
yeah, it definitely says premium next to the little toggle. Yeah. So I'm guessing that's how it's going to be in the future.
So if you're looking for it and you're using Yoast free version, you may not have that ability.
Thank you. Yeah, good.
Go upgrade.
Yeah,
upgrade.
That's right.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so mentioned at the beginning, Courtney hopped into the comments right away. Courtney would like many people to go out and fill out a very short survey. It's called the Individual Learner Survey. I wish I could show you the questions, but in order to progress from the first page, I basically have to on screen put in my email address and all of that kind of stuff. But Courtney's described it. She says the Make WordPress training team wants to know how you learn WordPress. What's your preferred learning style, and where do you go for training, and what you would like to see? She also says it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete the survey. And so if you have it as, if you would like to make use of learning WordPress information in the future and you want to help the team out, the URL is pretty straightforward. It's learn.wordpress.org / and then these 3 words are hyphenated, individual learner survey. And you can probably Google that, learn.wordpress.org individual learner survey, and it's a pretty quick thing to go through. So Courtney, I hope that satisfied that request. Just want a quick shout out. I hung out with Robbie from Beaver Builder over the last couple of days at WordCamp US, and then no sooner had I got back to the UK than he filled my inbox with his lovely email about what's new in WordPress 2.6. Seems like a pretty big update. They've got a whole ton of new things. They've got integrating with blocks of all things, reusable blocks, micro page templates, new breakpoint in global settings, Google font previews, and much more. Because we're running short of time, I'm going to have to just leave it as simple as that. But go over to wpbeaverbuilder.com and search on their blog, and you'll be able to find this latest update 2.6. Let's not do that one just shall we do that one? Amber wants to do this
salary
one.
I don't know, salary might be more fun to talk about, although the auto-generated images is neat.
I'll do the auto-generated images next time. I'll save that away for the next show, but very cool. I'll just quickly say it very quickly. Stability AI is a PC version of things like DALL-E and Midjourney. It's in beta. You've got to sort of compile it yourself. I think I haven't actually managed to get onto it, but basically all of that clever image AI stuff that you've seen with third-party services using infrastructure somewhere in the cloud, it's now available on the Mac and the PC, and boy, does it look good. So it's free as well, which we all love. So let's end on this one. Transparency, salary transparency. Why not, writes Peacher Neri. Peacher Neri must have more or less eroded her keyboard during the course of this one, because she's written a gigantic piece. We're going to scratch the surface of this. But basically, she's saying, why don't companies, when they advertise jobs, and obviously some companies do, some companies don't, why don't they tell you what the salary range is? And so from a company point of view, I guess there's certain benefits. You know, if you don't say what the salary range is, who knows what caliber of people you might attract? It might be that, you know, you get some people with very little experience, but you might get people with really unexpectedly massive experience. And you think, okay, they're probably worth that double the salary of this other person over there. However, for the person seeking the job, you know, you just want to know how much you're likely to get paid, because at the end of the day, why would you put all of the time into curating your CV and putting together all of the unique proposal that you would do, all of the paperwork that you need to submit, if you've got no idea? There's a lovely little thing in here. I think it was Mike Oliver said that he applied for a job, went through the 4-round stage of the whole thing. I think he got the job and then realized it was $20,000 less than the current job. It's kind of like, oh, okay, it's a bit of a letdown. So I'm going to launch that one in. You've got 3 minutes. Discuss.
I just have to say, like, not only is that a waste of his time, that's a huge waste of that company's time. Going through 4 rounds of interviews with a candidate that was in no way going to accept that job.
Yeah.
And that's for us. I think in the very beginning, we didn't. I mean, years ago, because we were like, oh, we don't want people to apply and say they want more money than, you know, like they'll go. It's like the whole weird, like, this is my budget, they're just going to fill up my budget, right? Like that kind of thing that a client might think. And then we had a few instances where we interviewed people and then they told us their salary expectations not 4 interviews in, because we asked it like on the second one, and we were just like, oh, we have to go back to drawing board, we can't pay these people. And then I was like, this is dumb. We need to just post, this is the salary range for this position, and then people will apply for it. And if they don't want to, they won't. And it saves us so much time.
Right.
And so I don't understand why other companies don't. I'm just like, you will get much better candidates if you're honest about it. And if somebody wasn't making that range and they were lower and they're aspiring to it, but they go through your interview process and they're great, who cares that you're suddenly giving them a $20,000 or $30,000 bump in their salary, right? Like, it shouldn't matter. And there are places where it is required by law. In the United States, there are states. So we were based in Colorado. In Colorado, it is required by law to post salary when you post a job. So anyone in the United States, if you're hiring and you're accepting candidates from Colorado and you don't post that, you are violating the law.
So if you are posting a distributed job and your company's based in Colorado, you are breaking the law.
No, not if well, it's not just if your company's based in Colorado. If you are allowing applicants from the state of Colorado to apply to your job.
I see. Yeah.
Then you are breaking the law.
Yeah.
And you could get in trouble with the state of Colorado if an applicant reports your job posting. So literally that effectively means any distributed job in the United States should have a salary posted on it. Unless you're explicitly saying Colorado applicants cannot apply.
I feel Peach's stirred up a hornet's nest here, but which we don't have time to bat back. But we're also running out of time. So unless Michelle and Marcus have got something crucial to say, I know your time's precious and I don't want to use more of it than you've allocated to me. So unless Marcus and Michelle have something to say, I'll knock it on the head.
I couldn't say it in 2 minutes, so we'll
Okay.
have to circle back.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, there's a couple for next time. We can definitely restore those. That's it, I believe. Thank you very much, Jess Frick. Breaking the law. Here's a weird thing. Just very quickly before we end, you guys in America are far happier talking about money than we are. We are so incapable of talking about what we earn and things like that. It's like you wouldn't even tell your mother what you earn. It's so weird. So anyway,
do you post salaries in the UK?
Yeah,
on
but
jobs?
like the only people whose salaries you know are people who work for the government, like teachers and what have you, because there's a statutory amount, and so you could, if you really wanted to, go and look and see that. Okay, they've been working for 12 years as a teacher. That's the kind of classroom that they've got. I know what they earn, but nobody else will tell anybody else. It's like completely taboo. You never say what's your salary.
So you think like Buffer is weird? You can go on Buffer's website and see the salary of every single employee.
I don't
and that terrifies you.
I don't really know how it happened, but I remember being in the US and got into a conversation where a bunch of Americans were telling each other what they earned, and I was like, oh, this is voodoo. Stay away from the subject. Anyway, sorry, I've digressed again. Thank you so much to Michelle Frechette for joining us for the, 400th time or something. It's been a pleasure having you back. Thank you. Marcus Burnett, hope to see you back one day. Thanks for your contributions very much. And Amber Hines. It turns out, Amber, you couldn't have been better placed to come on this show. It was like the perfect one for you. So
I reached out to her at 2 a.m. We were having a conversation.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
We were both awake.
Yeah, and I hope that Sean's feeling better. But if you want to listen to this, we'll have it posted out on the website tomorrow. But for now, thanks for joining us. Oh no, we've got to do the wave. If everybody would raise their hands, I forgot about the wave. I know it's awful. I know it's horrible. I know. Oh look, Amber's just yay! I got it. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Thanks for all the comments, guys. Take it easy.